Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Trailer Park. Glad to see everybody back this week. Tonight we have got a full house, and it's going to be lots of fun because we're going to talk Mormon Mania. So joining us from the land of Mormonism, we have our dear friend Cash, of course, who was once a Mormon. Hi, Cash.
Hi. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. And we have Bryce Blankenagel. Did I say that right?
Oh, well done. Yes, indeed. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And Bryce is the host of Naked Mormonism. And Bryce also was once a Mormon.
Yes, indeed.
Is that a video cast? Because I'm going to start watching it if it is.
Just a catchy title, unfortunately, for now. But we'll see how the show develops soon.
Watch out when he goes live, right?
The garment.
And to round out our Mormon panel this evening, we have David Michael of My Book of Mormon podcast.
Never heard of him.
Who's never been a Mormon. Never been a Mormon, but he's figuring out how fucking weird it is with all the rest of us, right?
He's reading the Book of Mormon, though. That's a far cry, 90% better than most Mormons.
This is true.
And Cash, I know we haven't met, but I believe you met my cousin, what's his name? What was the name? Cletus or something?
Yes, we did.
I can't even remember what his name was.
And of course, joining us once again, because we can't get enough of her, and apparently she likes us too, Miss Ashley of No Religion Required.
Hey, everyone.
Hey. So, we are going to find out all about the crazy shit that is Mormonism. We've all heard some of the, weirder things like magic underwear, and we'll find out about that. And baptizing dead people, that's always fun. And I'm sure some of us have had the missionaries come to our door in their nice little shirts and their bicycles and such, and we can find out some more about that stuff too. So let's start. Cash, why don't you tell us a little bit about your, you grew up as a Mormon, I believe, yes?
Well, every time I bring up Mormonism on the show and I tell about my experiences and what I learned, even though it was false information, inevitably I get emails or a message on Facebook and it says, Mormons don't believe that, and these are ex-Mormons correcting me. And it's because we came from different times, and the Mormon church is forever changing. And so my family gathered around, and this isn't going to make sense probably, the Brigham Young stuff. And so some of that is not canonized, but my family knew it was true.
Of course.
So we got a little extra dose of batshittery in my upbringing. My father was strict as hell, and I mean, to the point of you did nothing on Sunday was one of the most impactful ones as a child. I remember is where you couldn't go outside. I dreaded Sundays because it meant you couldn't do anything, and then, God forbid, on the first Sunday of each month you couldn't eat. So you quit eating Saturday, and then you couldn't eat again till after church Sunday, which puts you, depending on how big your ward was or your branch, may put you at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So you go a full 24 hours without food. And for, you can see I'm not a small kid. And now at the time I was fine, but that's just a long time, and it doesn't make sense when you're doing it for, as a child. And so I dreaded these days. My dad didn't, you couldn't have, I remember a buddy of mine loaned me his Michael Jackson Thriller LP, the big one.
I had that.
And I went home and put it on my sister's. She had a pink, I don't know, it wasn't Barbie, but it was pink. Maybe it was Holly Hobby record player. And I put it on there, and I am jamming out in my room, and my dad comes in, busts it into me, and said that I had let the devil in my house.
Nice.
So I could go on and on and on, but the gist of it is I was a Mormon all the way up till adulthood. I stayed a Mormon, still tithed all the way into my late 30s.
And they require 10% of your, is it gross income or net?
10% gross minimum, because you have the missionary funds, you have several funds. If you've ever seen a tithing slip, there's blue million boxes you can check.
Okay, so you actually get to tell them where to spend it.
Right, not that there's any
But
kind of imbalance.
it's kind of like, I was going to say, it's kind of like peeing into the corner of a pool. As soon as you give them money, it just goes into the workings of the church. There's no control.
Well, the one that I've read the most about is the multi-billion-dollar shopping mall in Salt Lake City that they built.
Which they actually built that with some government subsidies from the city of Salt Lake City. So
Oh, lovely.
yeah, all $5 billion of it didn't come from them. They only financed about half of it.
Only half. Well,
And they did another one in Hawaii.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard about that one.
I'm not positive if it was before or after. I just remember it vaguely in my head that they had another mall with apartments and everything, kind of like the Salt Lake City deal.
Okay. Wow. So, Bryce, you were also raised Mormon, but you got out a little sooner than Cash, I believe, yes?
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, I'm 24 right now, so I didn't exactly spend 30 years tithing to the church or anything, but yeah, I mean, I kind of slowly drifted away throughout my teenage years, and by the time I was about 17 years old or so, I just kind of called it quits and cut it off because I was done. I hadn't journeyed towards atheism or agnosticism by that point, but I did think that religion was, I was like, kind of felt like this punk ass kid saying religion's for the weak and blah, 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 whatever. But I mean, I think that's kind of what spawned it. But now that I've done some more studying into it, I constantly ask myself, why the fuck did I believe in any of this? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's some pretty crazy shit. Like, I've always said that the only thing I've come across that's nuttier than Mormon doctrine is Scientology. And we've had an ex-Scientologist on the show, and that's some pretty batshit stuff, to tell you the truth. But interestingly, number of years ago, I got interested in, like, I've long been an atheist by then, but I got interested in learning about Mormonism. And for me, it was the fact that the religion was new enough that you could see the evolution of the religion firsthand. Like, as Cash was saying, it's ever changing. They call it a living church. And so for me, that's what I found to be really fascinating. And I actually spent quite a bit of time reading ex-Mormon bulletin boards and actual, like, practicing Mormons and learning some of the lingo and stuff. So I find it very,
so
very
that makes a lot more sense than what I did. I made the wrong assumption that to learn about Mormonism, you should read the Book of Mormon.
That's
apparently,
not so much.
That's not a quick way to find out. Yeah, I'm still that's actually why I've become fascinated with Mormon history and Mormon, like how it got to be, because just reading the Book of Mormon doesn't explain any of that. It just sounds like some lost books of the Old Testament that don't really change much, really, kind of a few details, but nothing that serious. And it's, so the whole, after the very beginning, the whole Moroni coming and visiting 3 times and hovering naked over his bed or whatever that craziness was about, that was like, what is happening? And then, but when it went into the kind of Old Testament-y stuff, it wasn't that far different than anything I'd ever seen in the Bible, or it was just like
790 pages or 790 something, goddamn straight out of Isaiah. I mean, he just took
that was tough. Yeah, okay, Cash. I admit that was the roughest part. I gotta admit that was tough.
So tell me, the Book of Mormon that you're using, David, is it which one is it? Because
it's the most current. So I did take the most current one. Yeah.
Okay.
But you wouldn't have known any better that there was older ones to even consider.
You should have You should have started the podcast with reading one of the 1830 facsimile copies, because that shows it in basically its original form after it came out of the printer. And there's all kinds of, there's over 4,000 differences from it to the current one, so it might have been
on your show. Bryce, on your show, didn't you talk that the original manuscript doesn't even have like punctuation in it?
I was gonna bring that up.
I would not want to read that. I would have no idea how to read that. I would become dyslexic attempting it. Like how do you even do that?
It was just a giant multi-page paragraph, right?
Mm-hmm. Each chapter was a paragraph, and the chapters aren't how we read them now, because each book is like the first book of Nephi is split up into 20-something chapters, I believe. The first book of Nephi in the original one is like 4 or 5 chapters. It's huge, and each chapter is like 7 to 9 to 12 pages long. It's absolutely amazing.
I know I always ask for no spoilers, but we're about to start the 3rd fucking book of Nephi. Are there more after this? Is there a 4th book of Nephi?
I'm not going to tell you one way or another. You just have to find out.
I heard rumors of this 3rd book of Nephi months ago, and I was like, well, that can't be. He died years ago. This makes no sense. And then, sure enough, there it is.
But wasn't there like 2 dead Helamans before we got to the end of that? Like they both died. Didn't they?
No, they did.
Yeah, they both died.
It was like the first chapter of Helaman. Helaman the second died, and I was like, well, what the hell's the point of the rest of this book? It was weird. Helaman should have started earlier. I don't know who picked the book names. It's all weird. But, again, I'm just, to not be too mean on it, and I'm always trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. The Bible's even worse, right? It's an improvement on it, but it's
I'll give the Book of Mormon this. They don't spend for fucking ever telling you how to build a tabernacle.
Right, and there's not endless pages on who begat who. Right?
Yes.
We don't. There's a family. You got to keep up with the genealogy, but it's not like 500 fucking names. It's like, a handful. And they keep reusing the names.
Yes.
Although that actually makes it a little more complicated.
It's like, which Nephi is this now?
I can just see someone staring into a hat with some rocks going, and then was born, can we go with Nephi again? Sure. Let's use that one again.
Can't Nephi yet.
I'm not creative tonight. And I think he did the same thing. Actually, somebody just posted the website on the show I just put up, episode 60. And so it's going through this whole thing where every year they have to make an account. And he said, can you just imagine Joe looking in there on a non-creative night going, and in the 57th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi, and he says, uncomfortable pause, everyone looking up, and he says, nothing really happened. And in the 58th year of the people of Nephi.
Well, there were some of those.
There are passages that just say...
Yeah, and they passed that year in peace or something, and then they moved on.
Nothing. And then it's like, well, why write that down? Nothing happened this all year. Just wanted to let you know. Anyway, for those of you that don't, if those of you not laughing, you should probably check out the My Book of Mormon podcast.
Yes, you should. And make sure you've got lots of booze with you when you do.
Right. It's an instinct now. In public, someone's like just happy about something, and they say "yay," and I just yell "drink," and they all look at me like "what?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, it's a reflex."
At least it came to pass as not part of the regular vernacular.
Well, yeah. Thank goodness for Bryce, because he missed tons of them when he was on my show.
Hey, I had 3 strikes, but I got it all after that, so it was a little bit of a rough start.
It was a heavy drinking episode, though. How many was it for that one?
I can't remember. Way too many. And I mean, I was hungover from the night before as well when we started it, so I mean, it was a train wreck.
Oh, jeez.
But it was enjoyable.
All right, so listen. I'm probably going to be like quite silent for most of this podcast. If you really want to learn about Mormonism, but if you want to know about the source material from a undogmented, what's the word?
Dogfucked.
All right.
If you just want the pure source material, I'll chime in. But if you want to know about magic underwear or what was the other thing? Baptizing dead people. That all sounds like a fun party. Don't get me wrong. But I'm afraid I have little to contribute.
Well, Cash, did you ever have to baptize dead people?
Yes. That was in the church. That's an honor to be able to do that, and you receive blessings. It's why I'm so wealthy today.
Because I know Bryce told me he got out before he got to have that kind of fun. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about what baptizing dead people is like?
It's just a pool of water. It's like, we call it a baptismal font, and you can only do this in the temple, in the holiest of holies. Basically, you go in, and you're basically like feeder cattle, because there's a bunch of you, and you'll do like, I don't know, 7 to 14 sessions where you come out of the water and getting back in line and do it again. Sometimes they will do multiples while you're in the water. So you're in the water with some guy that's holding you so he can dip you back, like, some kind of 50s swing dance thing, and make sure there's people watching, there's witnesses, because every bit of your clothing has to be submerged, otherwise it doesn't take.
And your feet
everybody
can't
stop. If it were possible to just rewind this and say, pretend that you were a listener that just happened to turn it on the moment Cass started talking before he heard the question. Right? It was, they like to do it in multiples. You get in a pool with a bunch of men. You have to immerse. I mean, I was like getting hot and bothered listening to this, and I knew what we were talking about.
That sounds like
everyone's just gonna. Wow.
It sounds like a party at Pastor Roy's.
That was odd. Everyone's getting baptized in that pool, dead or alive. All right, sorry, I just couldn't let that go. I gave a pause. I was like, nobody else is gonna jump on that.
That's
All
awesome.
right, we'll take that live grenade.
Yeah,
Right.
and there's been controversy with this because the church has been caught baptizing famous dead people and most famously Holocaust victims, if I'm correct. Yes.
That's correct. They got sued.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think they baptized Hitler at roughly the same time too.
They've
Yeah.
baptized everybody. That's why they.
Hitler, you're lying.
No,
That's
I'm not.
No, Hitler, Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, quite a few people throughout history that have been baptized multiple times.
Why?
Not just
Why
one
would you do
time.
this? How is that a good marketing scheme?
Well, you have
Oh,
to
I
save
don't-
them. You got to save their soul. So when after you die, you can go up to heaven through the veil, and you get a big hug from Hitler because he's so happy
Right.
that you saved his
Right.
soul.
Well, here's the thing though, David, is they actually, because Hitler didn't get a chance to accept Jesus Christ and accept the church as the true church, he gets a chance in heaven. It's basically like the Catholic limbo, though. They're not in heaven yet. They're just in the spirit world, and they are being taught. Well, once they get baptized on earth, by proxy, they have the decision to make. Hey, do I accept this? And if they do, they get to move on to heaven. So Hitler, Ted Bundy, all of them.
Anne Frank was one of the big
Oh.
ones. She's been done, I think, 3 times now. And her family, remaining family and the organization that runs the Anne Frank house, I think they were the last lawsuit against them. If I remember correctly.
Listen, I'm sure either I'm an idiot or most of your listeners that don't know all about Mormonism will agree. What the fuck are you talking about? This is crazy.
Yes.
This is like, okay, I don't understand. So let's go to. I mean, there's no way we can have a list of every name of all of the Jews killed in the Holocaust or the, Chinese killed by Genghis Khan or any of this. So why? It's just like if your name happened to be recorded in history, we have to make sure you get saved.
The Mormon Church has the most thorough database
Of genealogy
genealogy on the planet.
for that reason.
Just so they can name names. Like I'm gonna
Yep.
just.
And they also believe that after the rapture, after Jesus comes, it's going to be so much easier for everybody to do their genealogy for their family because they'll be able to talk to the spirits in person and actually verify who is their family member. So necromancy gets way easier and way better after Jesus comes.
But that
That I
assumes,
didn't know.
that assumes that, 20 times great uncle.
You don't have to. You just have to know some, because they're all supposedly dead now,
Right.
and so the further you get back they are, and so you just find the first few, and then they just keep telling you and telling you and telling you, and most
Okay.
people that have passed already have all the wisdom, so they can open the doors to the family tree. So,
All right, so most of what I know about, like when you hear about why a church does what it does, especially a large organized church, you can point to things like it's a good way to market yourself to get more followers, it's a good way to get more money or whatever. This actually sounds like they believe this is true altruism.
no, it's not.
Okay, explain.
This has to do with, it's a sales pitch, I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe it's a sales pitch, because the Mormon Church prides itself in having all the goddamn answers. And so because it's so thorough, it's all horseshit, and they know it. Because it's such a pomp and circumstance, everything is to the T. You can't go into the temple. You've been into the temple, haven't you?
Me?
Me?
Oh, yeah.
No, not David, but Bryce.
Okay.
Yeah, I did baptisms for the dead, but I never went through the endowment ceremony. So.
Okay. So you know the rigmarole. You have to go through a temple recommend to get a temple recommend first.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a big ordeal. It's like getting a goddamn passport if you're brown skinned.
And not only that, but like once you get into the temple itself, just how much like cattle you feel. You're just you go to this one desk. You're all standing in a line. You go to this one desk and you check out your whites from the temple worker, which includes the full white suit and then the underwear that they provide for you, which has been worn by every single other person that's done baptisms for the dead. So maybe sanitize afterwards, but that's separate. But then after that, you go into, like, this is just a baptismal ceremony, but like how we did it, we went into the confirmation room after that, where there's just a few temple workers that are sitting on chairs that have armrests that they can just wait for a person to sit on the chair underneath them, and then the three men put their hands on the head of the person that's being confirmed for the dead, and there's rattle off one prayer after another, just one, bam, 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 for 10, 20, 30 people or whoever, and then after that you all get filed into where the baptismal font is, and you all sit around the baptismal font that's supported by 12 golden oxen, and they just have books of Mormon that are sitting in the pews that you can sit there and read, or, I mean, there's no talking, it's completely dead silence in there aside from the person that's saying the prayer. But then after that, you are filed back in to where you go to shower and change, and then you change back into your clothes, and then you're ushered out of the church. That's it, you're gone. So yeah, I mean, like you said, Cash, it's very methodical, it's very efficient, and yeah, I honestly do believe that they're doing it for what they see as genuine altruistic reasons for people's eternal salvation.
Well, I think the members are.
Yes, the members. Yeah.
Leadership. I think the leadership knows, because anybody that is studied Brigham Young or Joseph Smith, those are horror stories. Those are that is the worst of humanity has to offer is those two men, and so we haven't even broached that subject. But
Well, Cash, I don't know if you've listened to Bryce's show, but it's pretty exposing of how shitty those men were.
Bryce does a good job.
No, I hadn't heard of the show.
Well, Bryce's focus is on the actual documentable history of the church, so it's really informative. Actually,
It's
Bryce,
almost like when Bryce first started, we were collaborating a little, trying to debate whether it should be in the religious category, on the whole podcast, or history, because it really is history from a true point of view, because he's giving it a fair shake and just reporting the news of what happened. But holy shit, when you hear the whole story, it's like, wow.
Well, Bryce, why don't you give us the highlights of Joseph and Brigham there?
Oh shit. There's no highlight. Like, you can't focus on the highlights just because the people themselves were such huge and dynamic characters
Right.
that there's so many pieces of them to try and piece together. It's absolutely unfathomable to try and think of what they all did. But you can look at very individual circumstances, like, let's say, Brigham Young authorizing and commanding the, let's just take the most basic example, the Mountain Meadows Massacre, right?
Yes.
Where there's 120 men, women, and children that were just slaughtered because they were passing through Utah, and some of the people that were living in Utah, some of the Mormons that were living under Bloody Brigham, they decided to break off and go with this wagon train towards, I believe it was California.
Yes.
And, well, Brigham was just pissed, so he just told a small contingency of men to team up with some Native Americans that were down there and just lay siege to these people for 5 days straight. And then once their numbers were so little, they just made an all-out bum rush on the crowd and cracked babies' skulls against wagon wheels and did all kinds of crazy-ass shit. So, I mean, that's one very, very small example. And that wasn't even the biggest massacre that the Mormon Church is responsible for.
Yeah, Mountain Meadows really got kind of swept under the rug. That's one that I had heard about just from my hanging out and bulletin boards and stuff, but it's pretty brutal. I mean, Brigham Young was a supreme asshole. Like, and he had a ridiculous amount of wives, too, if I recall.
Yeah,
I have a question coming in from Chad, if I can interject.
Sure.
Reverend Dave asks, is there a symbolic, this is in regards to the baptism of the dead, is there a symbolic representation of the dead to be baptized, or is a live person that is used in effigy?
I don't understand the question.
He said,
Yeah,
I'd like,
it's-
yeah, it's a live he's like, do you just, like, dunk a statue or a live person? And it's
Alive.
alive.
No, it's alive people.
Yeah,
It's usually the youth that are doing it.
it's
Yeah.
it's busy work.
So wait. So the live person says, like, yes, I would like to volunteer to be Adolf Hitler for the hour. I don't
Yes.
understand.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, I'm actually serious. What is the logic behind it?
You don't know the names until you get in there. As far as I didn't.
So you get in the pool, and you don't know what's going on. You're just you get the robe on, and all of a sudden it's like, and I now baptize Adolf Hitler. Like, wait, what now? Glunk? Oh, fuck me. I mean, is that really what happens? I'm actually.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually
you?
like when you're like in the baptismal font. Like I'm most accustomed to this orientation in the baptismal font. Cash was probably a little more accustomed to this, where he would have his hand up to the square and then he would take the person down and dunk him.
Right.
But I would be the person holding onto his arm, and then when he was about to dunk, I'd grab my nose and plug it, right? So what it is, how it's set up is you and the person that are baptizing you are staring at a screen that has the script of the prayer, and then it has a blank for the person's name. And then a person sitting up at a desk with a projector on a TV, they just scroll the piece of paper down on names, and it's just in series. You just
Quite
do them,
literally.
whether it's by age or by alphabet or your entire family members. You can,
Bob Smith and Jimmy James and
well,
Adolf Hitler. Oh, fuck.
no, all of those names have already been done.
Yeah.
All of those have been done, all the easy ones. So when you go, it's like these crazy old, like 1200 Spanish names from the Inquisition, and like crazy, unbelievable, incomprehensible names. And then to hear the person that's baptizing you try to like pronounce it, that's part of the entertainment in and of itself.
They baptized the popes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you have someone with their hand up, somebody else holding the arm. Who's doing the reach around? It seems polite, right? At that point,
Now, and part of that
Showed up.
ceremony,
it seems
sorry,
polite.
there was a part of, I think it was the endowment ceremony that they've since removed, called the washing and anointing, where people were
Well,
basically
now there you got to reach around, from what
they
I
were
understand.
they
I've
were
heard about
basically
this.
getting groped by old people.
No, that is true. I wasn't a part of that, but I've actually seen the video of it. There was somebody that has a video of it, but then they reenacted what the older ways they used to do it.
Right.
The bath thing, the wipe down.
Yeah. Because I've read descriptions, and it's like they're wearing, like, basically a paper poncho, and, like, they were basically getting fondled by temple workers, and eventually they decided, or Jesus told the prophet that maybe that wasn't such a good idea anymore.
These were at a bare absolute minimum. These were at least adults, right?
Yes. That the endowments
Is this when you get married?
It's really once you reach the age of 18, you can, I believe it's 18, you can get your endowments done. Before your mission for a male, you would get your endowments done, and you become an elder in the church.
And that's why the missionaries are called Elder Smith and Elder Jones.
I gotcha.
But even my dad's still an elder.
Uh-huh.
I'm not trying to be an apologist. I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving an image of like 8-year-olds and getting fondled.
No,
like,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
All right.
They left that to the Boy Scout leaders. The temple was sacred.
No, they left that to the Catholic priests is who they left it to.
No, they actually left it to the Boy Scout members too, because the Mormon Church has been in trouble for that numerous times. In fact, their big pineapple farm in Hawaii that my family tried to send me to, and I basically ran away from home, so I didn't have to go, and I missed the flight, and it took my dad off, and but I was being shipped off to this pineapple farm for the summer, and that has a long legacy of child abuse.
I never heard about that. Thank you for telling me about that, Cash. I might have to do a little research there.
Yeah, there's been lawsuits.
Huh? No shit.
Cash, you just birthed a couple episodes of Naked Mormonism. Hope you know that.
Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Yeah, I believe it's closed down now. I believe it is.
Oh, wow. Even better.
Yeah, you'll be able to find it though.
Wow. So that's the crazy baptizing, and the other thing, like the endowment, is I would liken it in Protestantism to being like a confirmation or first communion or that sort of thing. It's like, okay, now I'm like officially a grown-up member of the church kind of thing. Does that sound about right, guys?
No, I mean you're considered at 12 when you get the Aaronic priesthood.
Okay.
You're considered at that point pretty much, you have the priesthood. And
Can I say that like everyone that I've ever met that's ever even been associated with Mormonism assumes that the world knows the difference between Melchizedek and Aaronic, and like no one else knows what any of that means.
I can't even
So
pronounce that.
Cash, you're like, it's the Aaronic priesthood, and I'm like, no one knows what that means, man.
well, it's in the Bible. It's those are from the Bible.
I get it, but no one else uses those terms outside of Mormonism.
No, you're exactly right. The there's I don't remember all this, but the Aaronic priesthood you get when you're 12. It's just like a level. It's like getting a star in kindergarten when you do something good.
So you're yellow belt.
Yeah, you're yellow belt.
There you go.
Call the deacon.
And you're a deacon, and you can pass sacrament. You can't bless sacrament. You can't prepare.
Wait. For everyone else, for the record, for everyone else in the world, I've learned that means communion.
Yes.
Okay, go on.
It is
Again,
It is
you
another.
guys don't know. Like, everyone that's ever been a Mormon assumes that the world speaks Mormonese, and we really don't.
See,
Like, no one else says sacrament.
I'm at a disadvantage because I know, because I know all those terms from my reading. So I'm like, yes,
I've learned them. I think I'm conversational. I speak conversational Mormonese. I'm certainly not fluent by any stretch. But anyway, so when you said sacrament, I keep interrupting, but I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be an outsider trying to figure all this out, and it's like, no, I don't know what. And everyone's like, well, it was the Melchizedek priesthood. What the hell are you talking about? Like, it really is. It's so I'm. That might be something to just think about, Cash. How little of what is just you were just raised with, so it's so common, to say things like sacrament. And if you've never been Mormon, no one knows what even close to what that means. It's like, what do you say? Oh, that's communion elsewhere. Oh, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to sort of equate the endowment ceremony with something a little more mainstream, but it's
what is it, like Mormon prom, maybe?
No.
Kinda?
No.
I know. That was a joke. Calm down.
It's sacred. That's when your endowments, you get your
magic underwear.
Magic underwear, you get your fake name, your original name that Jesus gave you.
Which, do you know how they determine that, Cash?
I do.
I know that I've heard that they give the same names throughout the day.
You do.
Yeah, that's how they know where and when you got your name. If you lived in a certain demographic and you have a certain temple name, then they know that you took out your endowments on that specific day that they were giving out that name.
But did you guys?
Question.
Yes.
What is an endowment exactly?
You don't speak Mormonese either.
My Mormon knowledge is 30 years old, and it comes from a very Christian slant.
The purpose of today's episode is to educate the audience on this batshit craziness, which is Mormonism. And so, yes, great question. What is an endowment?
Cash, are you taking that, or am I taking that one?
No, go ahead, Bryce. I'm further removed from it than you.
Oh, all right. So the endowment is basically what Mormons consider to be the blessing from God. As you're progressing through Mormonism, there's a few different times that you are given certain blessings, one of which is your patriarchal blessing, which you can get at any time, and another one of which is this endowment ceremony that you go through in the temple. So basically what it involves is you go to the temple carrying your personal little apron and your veil, just little extra things that are used for the ceremony, and then you go to the temple and get your whites, and you sit down and watch this movie for a little while. And then in between, the movie pauses at various points, and you enact whatever the movie told you that it just enacted. So it usually involves a handshake or saying a certain phrase a certain way, or any number of crazy-ass shit. But so once you go through that ceremony, then you go to what is called the room, the Holy of Holies, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where you have where the veil is, and each person has to go through the veil with a temple worker on the other side, shaking the hands, or performing the various handshakes.
And they're pretending to be God. They're pretending to be God, correct?
More or less. This is it's like an enactment of how you enter from the physical world into the spiritual world. So the male that has his temple name, he goes up to the temple worker that's on the other side of the veil, and they perform the various handshakes, and they say these ritual things in a certain way, in a certain phrase, and then they repeat their temple name. And if they do all of these things correctly, I think there's like 4 or maybe 5 different handshakes and phrases you have to say. 4, okay, yeah. Then you get to go through the veil, and then the male can turn around and administer the same test to a wife of his that he's pulling through the veil as well. So the women can only get into the spiritual world through a man, basically, is what's implied there. Once you are...
What's that, Cash?
Yeah, I said it's the way it should be.
All right. But
Cash is sleeping on the couch tonight.
Yeah. Not to interrupt, but okay, secret handshake, that sounds an awfully... like Mason.
It is. Bryce, you can tell us about that.
So this was my question. And my history on this is really rusty. So, was Joseph Smith associated with the Masons or accused to be?
Yes.
So
that would explain that.
not only was he like associated with the Masons, he initially started out as an anti-Mason, which was
Okay, that's right.
kind of the political standing at the time, which is actually
Right.
reflected in the writings of the Book of Mormon. So whenever you read in the Book of Mormon and you see it bring up the Gadian robbers, this band of whoever these guys are that are creating various mischiefs and stuff, it's actually analogous to the Masons at the time because they were revered as these secret combinations, right? So Joseph started out as an anti-Mason, as was politically popular at the time, but as he progressed further and further, his older brother Hiram became a master Mason.
Okay, that's right.
Through the levels, and then very soon after that, Joseph became a master Mason. This was after the church was founded. And then right after that, he came out with the full and completed temple ceremony through Revelation.
Actually, Bryce,
Okay.
I think we just finished that part of the Book of Mormon,
We
and
did.
I remember it actually saying that like secret handshakes are
handshakes.
evil.
I,
They're the devil.
I
You're all
remember
correct.
that. When you read that, I was like, oh, wait till he finds out about the endowment ceremony.
And my favorite part that you recently just read, David, was when it was talking about the people that hide their treasure in the ground should be first. I laughed so fucking hard.
And tell everybody why that's especially hilarious, Bryce.
Well, because that was Joe's whole lifestyle. That was not just Joe, but it was his dad, who I call Big Daddy Cheese, his older brother Alvin, who died in 1823, his older brother Hiram, and his younger brothers Samuel and Don Carlos. All of the Smith boys did this treasure-seeking shit, and when you hear some of the stories of it, like them saying that they were digging near a schoolhouse and the lights turned on spontaneously and frightened them away, or they were working and the box that they hit the box when they were digging, and then as soon as they tried to pry it open, it sank into the ground. And you're just like, it's complete batshit nuttery, but then you hear these same themes reflected throughout the Book of Mormon, and you're just like, oh, huh. So Joseph was writing a lot about what he was pissed off about in his life.
Yep.
Huh. Just like everybody else does. That's amazing.
I think his business card literally said Joseph Smith Treasure Hunter. Like that was his profession. That's what he did for a living.
And he was convicted of fraud based on that as well, if I recall.
Multiple times, actually, on multiple different accounts.
Yeah, I knew of two from reading No One Knows My Name, I think it is. Have you read that book?
I have yet to read it. I'm looking really forward to it, though.
Fantastic. I haven't read Rough Stone Rolling yet.
Oh, I want to read that. I'm actually, right now, the book that I'm buried deep into is The Rise of Mormonism by H. Michael Marquardt. It's like 700 pages of well-cited, documented history. It's blowing my mind, and I'm using it as a constant reference for the show too. So
the book by B.H. Roberts, he was a church historian. He was one of the quorum of the 12 as far as the 70s, I guess it was. He was in line for being a prophet at some point, and he was the church historian, and he found the problems with Joseph Smith's story. And that is an incredible book. It's probably equally as thick as that one you just showed, and I've read it from front to back and learned even more. I didn't know that stuff existed. I didn't read that till I think I was 39 or 40.
Well, one of my favorite things about this this quote-unquote anti-Mormonism movement that I'm kind of looking into, pretty much everybody that is in the anti-Mormonism movement was a Mormon. Well, pretty much everybody that has written any sort of sourced and factual-based book, they were believing Mormons at some point that just did a little bit of studying and realized it was all bullshit.
Well, B.H. Roberts went to the prophet. I'm talking directly to the prophet and said, here's what I have found. We need to figure out a way to fix this, to word this. And they ostracized him. You should see the story on this man. This man was, you're talking 30 years in the quorum of the 70s, I believe it was.
Wow, didn't Grant Palmer have kind of a similar role in the church as well? And he turned out way. He's done a lot of these anti-Mormon literatures as well. So wasn't he kind of the same way as well?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Grant Palmer.
Okay.
What's maybe we can tell people what's a quorum of the 70s?
Okay. Quorum of the 70s. Yeah, new rabbit trail. So there
Just
are
basics.
Okay, if I'm not mistaken, the church leadership is comprised of the president and prophet of the church, who's Thomas S. Monson right now, and then it breaks down into the first presidency, which is his first and second counselor and secretary, basically. So that makes up the three at the head of the quorum of the 12, and then there's the 12 underneath them. And then underneath those 12, I believe there are two different groups of 70s, so of the quorum of the 70s. So it's basically like it's the stepping stone quorum to be in, and as
Right. Bryce, let me make an attempt to simplify this. So the prophet is let's equate it to Catholicism.
Right.
Prophet's the Pope. The next one, the whatever quorum of some nonsense, is like cardinals, and then you've got like the 70 might be bishops.
Yeah, that's a good
like
way of
that.
saying it.
All right.
Yeah.
But it's also they all live and work in their own communities, and they're oftentimes bishops in their own churches and stuff like that as well. So they hold these positions in congruence with other positions as well, and they just it's kind of like a part-time job that they just perform for the church.
What I'm interested to learn is like let's just forget the whole how the Book of Mormon came to be. But as I'm reading it, it's not that far off from what Christianity is. It's a couple little twists, but I'm sure any good apologist could work their way around them. It's the fact that Mormonism, as we understand it today, is so different than normal Christianity in so many ways. And so I think what's fascinating about Mormonism is like we actually get to see, like firsthand almost, because there are so many historical accounts, how does a religion start, right? Like we actually get to see it get birthed, and what does it go through? Because if you read the Bible, it's like so many of the stories of the Bible are just a part of our culture, like Noah's Ark and Moses, and it's just, but if you honestly had never heard it before, it would just be like, you'd read it and say, how does anyone believe this? This is nonsense, right? And we get to see how, like, as you really look through the history. That's why I'm so fascinated. I wasn't before, but as I'm reading this book, and it's like, how did this turn into that, right? And and we actually get to know. We have the evidence to find out, and I think it's fascinating. And as much as I know we all like to just say how silly it is to believe in a God and all this, but so many people do, and it's a part of the humanity as it is today, and I think it's a great case study to find out how religions start, how they become a thing that people can be so bought into, and because otherwise you have to look through thousands of years of history. This is like, it's like watching a star being born. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why I found it. That's why I found it so fascinating, and why I started to study and read about it. And now I tried to read the Book of Mormon, and I got about 2 paragraphs in and went, no, I can't read this shit. So thank you, David Michael, because now I have a clue what's going on in there. But
this was a big time for religion. In the early 1800s. You had the Christian Scientists, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Seventh-day Adventists. All of them came about all within the same period. So we have a lot of case stuff.
Yeah,
well, that was
true.
The beginning of revivalism within the early church here in the U.S. was during that time period. So that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Mormon Church, the specific time frame that it was birthed in between that 1826 to 1832 period, that was actually called the Second Great Awakening in this burned over district that Joseph lived in. And that was it was called the burned over district because religious revivals were constantly just scorching the earth, and all of the believers that were Christians that were just converting to whatever was the brand new Christianity that they thought, that some prophet had come along. It was just one of these churches needed to stick somehow, so they needed funding. So Joseph was unique in that respect because he was able to get funding from somebody to start his church.
Wow. Okay, let's take a minute, and we're going to have our creation moment from this week. And after that, we have some questions from the chat that we'd like to go into. So let's have our creation moment.
Behold, the atheist's nightmare. A well-made banana is just the right shape for the human mouth. It's chewy, easy to digest, and it's even curved toward the face to make the whole process so much easier.
I choose to believe
When we do that,
I have no the hell idea what just happened.
I just want to let you know that there actually is a book out there that actually tells us where matter came from. Bill, I do want to say that there is a book out there.
Next time you hear on television somebody say millions of years ago, what's the question we're going to ask them? Were you there? Were you there? Call them up on the telephone and say, excuse me, Mr. TV man, were you there? Only way we could know what happened in the past if someone was there to tell us. That's right, dinosaurs lived beside people. And of course you'll have an evolutionist who'll say, that's not right, dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. What do you ask them? Were you there?
Hello, and welcome to this week's Creation Moment. A little slice of creation silliness that I get in my email several times a day that I'd like to share with you so that we can all be enlightened as to just how crazy creation shit is. In this week's Creation Moment, our host, Ian Taylor, talks about sunfish. And the fact that apparently sunfish have really intriguing personalities. So, let's have a listen to our friend Mr. Taylor's spiel for this week.
Are you shy or bold? Actually, if we are honest with ourselves, we must admit that we all have areas where we are bold and other areas where we are shy. A person can be bold and willing to fly in any aircraft and at the same time terrified when crossing a bridge. Now scientists have surprised themselves by discovering that the same is true of sunfish, crabs, and the octopus. Evolutionary scientists have always assumed that since the survival of the fittest is the driving force behind evolution, evolution would favor boldness.
Okay, hold it right there. Evolutionary theory favors boldness? Where the hell did he get that idea from? Obviously, he has no understanding of natural selection and what that means. Boldness would have nothing to do with it. It's the traits that are best adaptable to the environment that whatever creature lives in. So, bold or not, if you have a trait that is going to further your survival in the place that you live, that's the trait that's going to evolve forward. Whether or not the creature is bold doesn't have a damn thing to do with it. Anyway, let's continue.
But scientists found that when they introduced a novel object, say a stick with a red tip, into a school of sunfish, about a quarter of the fish fled from it, while another quarter of the school boldly nipped at the stick. But those fish who were shy towards the stick were no more likely than any other individual in the school to be shy when introduced to unfamiliar food. Those who nipped at the stick didn't prove any more likely to be bold when introduced to the unfamiliar food.
Okay. Of course, fish have different personalities. It's not like they have the exact same chemical makeup or that they've had the exact same experience. They're all different. An animal doesn't have to have a higher level of intelligence in order to have personality. I've seen it in all kinds of creatures. They're just all different. That doesn't mean that someone made a fish more bold than another fish. And what the hell does a painted stick have to do with whether they're interested in food or not? A stick could be seen as a threat, whereas fish might be inquisitive as to, hey, that smells like food. Can I eat that? Why don't I find out? It's not even remotely the same thing. Ugh. Okay, Mr. Taylor, what's next?
Other researchers have concluded that studies show the same behavior in crabs and in the octopus. The researchers marveled that even so-called simple animals showed individually unique traits, just as humans do. As one said, there must be something very special here. There is something very special here. That those creatures have individual personalities says nothing about evolution, but it does remind us that all living things have but one divine creator.
Okay, that's a hell of a leap. Animals show individual traits, therefore God made them? Where the hell does that come from? Even if that is unexpected that fish or other sort of so-called simple creatures have individual traits, which is not surprising. But even if it was, what the hell does God have to do with it? Why not investigate how that could have happened based on what must have done it? Right. Why should we be surprised? Now, the prayer that comes with this week's creation moment, this one's a doozy. It says, Father, I thank you for my unique personality, and I ask that it would be better conformed to Christ my Savior. What the fuck? Thanks for making me unique. Now, I'd really like to be less unique and conform to everyone else. Huh? Wow. So that's great that everything's unique, but we really don't want that because, Jesus. Right. So, fish have personality. Yes, but that has nothing to do with what survival of the fittest means. Being bold is not what they mean by the fittest. The fittest means the creature who has the traits that are best suited to the environment in which it lives. Those are the traits that will move forward in the gene pool, and those are the traits that create the fittest animal. Has nothing to do with whether they are assertive or not. Thanks for listening. That was this week's Creation Moment. All right.
Fucking rocked.
That was
you.
amazing. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, let me just say I was totally on his side until you translated it, because I thought he was saying that genetically baldness was superior. I was like, hell yeah. I kept hearing it, he's like, the baldness of the fish. I'm like, yes, fucking bald fish, take him out. Yeah, that's all I heard.
No, that would be bold.
But seriously, the way he said it was like, boldness. And I was like, yes, rather. The bold are the better ones. Yes, indeed. So thank you for translating it, because as soon as you started it, you're like, it's nothing about bold, and I was like, wait, what? Oh. Now I get it. Thanks.
Yeah, this is an email list that Foda got me signed up on. He just kind of said, hey, got a throwaway email? Yeah. Okay. And next thing I know, this shit pops up in my email every day. So
I don't know how bad off I am that I need a Canadian to translate British English for me.
I think that guy's an Aussie, actually, but yeah.
Oh, that's even worse. I'm surprised you figured it out without a Britisher in the middle. Yeah. There's a missing link there.
I guess there is, yes. We'll have to ask Donna about that or something.
You're just that educated. That's what
I
it is.
am. That's
you
it.
bridged the gap. You bridged the gap.
All right. So we have a few questions from the chat here. First one is, now I don't know who asked these. Beth has posted them up in our internal chat here so I can see them, but is the Doomsday movement in the Mormon Church as pervasive as it seems? Anybody know about that?
Yes, it is. At least in my experience, it was. I have a good friend that I went through 4 years of seminary with, and she got her patriarchal blessing in. Let me go back so David doesn't pitch a bitch.
What are you talking about, man? What you talking about?
Seminary is is like Sunday school from 9th through 12th grade. You go before each day of regular school, and for an hour. And so you have to leave early and get up early and bullshit for 4 years.
Or if you grow up in Utah like I did, they actually have provisions written into the law that you can you take a released time class and you actually take seminary during school hours. But yeah, that doesn't matter.
Right. Fuck y'all's education. It goes to what I'm saying. It's basically, yeah, fuck your education. This is important. We'll put this in the law. So what I would do is go to the seminary, and once you reach a certain age, I believe it's 14, you can have a patriarchal blessing, which means y'all know what a patriarch is. It's the boss of the family or the leader of the family. You've heard it in evolution. But
the man of the family is.
I was going to say there's a penis and there's a penis involved here.
Penis required.
Definitely a penis. And the patriarch of each stake, which stake is a group of churches in the same general area.
It's like your parish.
Yes, your parish. So you may have multiple churches in one stake, and that stake has a one of these people, a patriarch. And you go to the patriarch, he gives you like a 30-minute to an hour-long prayer where he magically gets your future. And it gets printed onto paper. And they tell you like how many kids you're going to have. Some of them are very specific. But I have a friend who I grew up with, and hers said that she would be alive and in her 30s when Christ returned, and she'd be accountable in Missouri, which is the New Jerusalem. That's where God is setting up the New Jerusalem, is in Missouri. And so the Mormon Church, this is no shit, owns more land in Missouri than the state of Missouri does. And so, and for that purpose, they've bought this land for that purpose. We don't know why they own the second largest landowner in Florida, though. So the bottom line is they, when the new church comes back, she was to be working there. Well, I'm in my 40s. She was the same age as me. And obviously Jesus didn't come back.
Oopsie.
if he had been kept hush-hush. So that's, I know this didn't go with the question, but I'm getting there. The question is do we think that this is that basically the end times? My dad told me, and he's a marine biologist, or went to school to be one, as far as that's what he graduated with a degree. But he never used it, but he told me, it doesn't really matter, Jesus is coming back. So I wasn't pushed towards education because Jesus is coming back. And so I did the same thing with my older kids, my first ones. I knew Jesus was coming back before I hit 40. And even though I wasn't active in the Mormon Church, I still tithed because I believed it. So I do think that they're still an end-time religion.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry that.
I wish that I could somehow record my 6-year-old son getting put to bed by my mother, who insists on reading him Bible stories. His reactions are so fantastic. So he's 6, and then I've raised him to question everything, and that's just, yeah. No, I don't tell him that religion's bad or anything, right? It's just like, this is the world, and let's talk about it. And anyway, so I've kind of been in the hallway and kind of listened in as she's like reading him stories, because the stuff he says it's just hilarious. And I remember when it was at Christmas. This is actually, it wasn't this, so over a year ago, so he would have been 5 at the time. She is telling him that, he's like, well, what happened to this Jesus, and she's like, oh, he lived and did a lot of great stuff, and he died for our sins, but he's going to come back. And he said, he's coming back? And she said, yes, he's absolutely going to come and save all of us. And he said, well, how long ago was this? And she's like, well, it was like, it's been, about 2,000 years. And I was just sitting, it was everything in me to not burst out laughing, because he said, Mama,
oh, that's perfect.
I don't think he's coming back. It was like someone telling the little girl, like, yeah, a year ago when Daddy said he was going out for cigarettes, yeah, he's not coming back. Like, he's telling this to his grandmother, like, I don't know how to tell you this, but 2,000 years? Ah, sorry, you've been stood up. I need to get over it.
The Mormons even have an answer to that, because the Bible says that Christ, he tells his apostles that there are those among you who will be alive when I return, and yet they're dead. But the Mormons don't believe they're all dead. The Mormons believe that a couple of the apostles are still roaming.
Oh, I've heard about that.
I think
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
What are they
the fiery
called?
furnace guys. The fiery furnace guys.
What are they? The Nephites or something?
The 3 Nephites.
Yes, that's right.
Is this a spoiler?
It's not in the
Shadrach-
book. It's not in the book, is it?
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are biblical figures that were thrown into a fiery furnace by Nebuchadnezzar, maybe, I think.
That sounds.
Am I right? Yeah.
You're right.
And they were like, well, what the fuck's going on? They're not dead. And then they looked in, and there was a fourth person in there, which we were supposed to surmise was God or someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was in there with them. Am I remembering this right?
Yeah, it's exactly right.
All right. And then, so I get that. That happened, and let's just say the Bible's accurate, and it's all true, of course. That would have been bajillion years ago. So what is this about? They're still alive? You got to catch me up here.
Yeah,
How?
I don't know what the Mormons call it, but there is Mormon doctrine or Mormon beliefs that scripture where Jesus promises that some will still be alive, that some are still alive. They're just hidden, and they do work on Earth, like the 3 Nephites. Is it the 3 Nephites, right?
Yeah, the 3 Nephites, and there
What
are.
is it? No, seriously, you guys are jumping ahead again. Is this reincarnation, or are these
No.
people who've been alive?
There are like those small niche of people that believe that one of the 3 Nephites has been Bigfoot spotted.
Yes.
Oh.
That's small.
Wait.
That's small. Bryce, in the South, that's a big niche.
What?
You go to my church that I grew up in, and there was talk of it. There's a lady named Sister Rains, and I was friends with her son, and we grew up together. He saw Bigfoot, the 3rd Nephite. She saw him in a cane field one night and told about it during sacrament meeting, during fast and testimony meeting.
Oh, that would have made for a fun testimony.
This was in South Carolina?
No, this was in Florida, North Florida. In the Swamp area.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
So they've incorporated Bigfoot into Mormonism?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
And
you
Quakers
God,
live
that's a rabbit hole I'll be going down.
I don't.
Listen to this shit. My sister, my youngest sister, believes in the Brigham Young stuff. And I don't know if if everybody knows what all that's about. But he has some crazy if you think Mormonism is crazy, the shit that didn't get canonized is way the fuck out there. But there is a bit about reincarnation, and that you'll continually come to the earth until your soul gains enough experience to go back. Well, my sister and my mother believe that they are on their last go around.
You guys are blowing my fucking mind. I'm still stuck on Bigfoot.
Have you ever
You're telling me that Bigfoot is a part of you? I'm sorry.
Have you ever heard of a second anointing? Has anybody ever contacted you about their second anointing?
I've heard about it.
All right, go, heretic.
First. The
Yes.
first anointing was the endowment ceremony?
Yes.
Am I right? See?
Yay. Good.
All right.
So
we got our handshakes down, we got all that out of the way, the oil's rubbed, and now...
So what I understand is if you're like super righteous and I don't know if it comes from the prophet. I think it actually comes from the prophet. Yes. And he decides that you're like super righteous. He'll secretly call you into the temple and have like a super secret second anointing ceremony, and that gets you like a fuckload of different new blessings and all that shit.
Well, you can do no wrong. There's nothing you can do from then on out.
This is so you're being a made man.
This is well, it's like Monopoly. It's the you get to just circumvent jail. It's the get out of jail free card, lifetime guaranteed.
It does cash. It kind of sounds like the mafia mentality of you're being a made man, like you're getting made.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's badass. And there's a member that actually got his second anointing, and it bothered him so much because he knew he was not worthy that he is now an atheist, and he's written the church, and he's actually done podcasts. He's done interviews. The guy is amazing, and he's very humble. He's not cocky and, brash like I would be.
Who's that guy?
I'm trying to think of it right now. I've actually spoken to him before.
Because I might know the name. I've lurked enough that I probably have heard of it.
It actually brings up another topic for me, though. The fact that this is an enormous difference between the Mafia and the Mormon Church is that a guy was made and left and talked shit about them, and it's all good, right? So you don't. That's not a Mafia mentality.
He could. There's blood atonement. There's blood atonement.
Whatever. Right. So the thing I want to bring up though is like I just have to ask, and this is the one thing that I think the reason Mormonism survives and is generally perceived as a good thing in the world by the general populace, right? Like most people don't believe in it, but no one thinks negatively about it. And I think it's because of this one thing. Mormons are so fucking nice. Like, they are the nicest, just smilingest, friendliest people in the world. And I have to know, in both of your opinions, where does that come from? Because it's even the people who have like been angry at me about my show, they're nice about it, right? Like it's a kind of like it's really sad that you're so lost, but I just think it's
at its best.
They're masters at passive aggressive.
So is it passive aggressive that appears friendly to an outsider? Because honestly, it just seems so nice, right?
My mom, people think she's a saint. She's sweet and talks like this. And he is so fucking Mormon, I can't even explain it. And nobody thinks she can even raise her voice. And she will cut you to the core without you even realizing. You'll go away from the conversation and be like, that bitch just said, I'm going to hell. I mean, fucking...
It seems like Bryce has been reminded of several things.
My grandma. You just described my exact, my grandma. That's exactly it.
No, they're taught to be that way. They're taught to be humble and respectful at all times. And now my dad isn't. My dad will tell you to fuck off. He doesn't want to talk to you anymore if you raise up any problems with the Mormon Church. He had an experience once, and he can't deny it anymore. Yeah, that guy, I put up the link. His name's Tom Phillips.
I saw that, yes.
And fantastic man. You ought to read that story if you ever get a chance. Humble man. Super humble.
Definitely.
He lost everybody. He lost his entire family. His kids don't even know.
That's brutal. So, quickly, Miss Ashley sends her apologies, but her work kind of blew up and she couldn't stay on any longer, so she had to go take care of some shit. But
Well, I apologize that we didn't get a chance to say goodnight to Miss Ashley. Miss Ashley, I hope you listen to this later. Goodbye and good night from all of us. And Bobby C, too. You lost Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby was kind of hanging around. He's such a gentleman. He likes to let
He's always back burner on your show. I know. Totally just like, step aside, Bobby.
Bobby is the work that Miss Ashley left for.
Yeah.
It wasn't blew up.
She said something about broken down trucks or something, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Broken equipment.
Yeah, those Georgia girls call it all kinds of shit.
So we have another question. Let's see. People would like to know a little bit about the divisions between the official LDS and some of the others. Like, for instance, Emma Smith, I believe she formed the Reformed LDS, if memory serves.
Even Joseph's brother started one.
Yeah.
There is no real official. The official is he who has the most money.
That makes sense.
But the one thing, let me ask this: the one thing all of those have in common is that they all drank the Kool-Aid that the Book of Mormon was a true thing that was revealed by God, right?
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, the Book of Mormon.
After that, the rest of the books, the Pearl and the Doctrines and all that, that's where there is a dispute between whether or not those are legit.
Yeah, but there was, for a time, right after Joseph Smith's death, there was the Sunni Shiite bullshit going on.
Oh, the successor?
The fighting bullshit. Who was supposed to be the prophet, and there was murders and shit over it. There was a bunch of shit.
Well, and Joseph Smith got shot in a jail.
Yeah, he did.
It was actually a gunfight. It wasn't a martyrdom by any stretch of imagination. It was a gunfight. He killed 2 dudes, and he hit 3 guys with a 6-shooter that was smuggled into him too. So, yep. I mean, when Mormons try and portray him as like this amazing martyr that died for the faith, no, he was just shot like a rat in a jail cell, and he tried to fight back. He tried to kill the people that were killing him.
For the record, neither of you gentlemen have thanked me. I am in the great state of Illinois. We took care of the problem. Just saying.
That's arguable.
No,
that is arguable. It might have been Bloody Brigham.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it happened here. That's all I'm saying.
And speaking to that, I just got a message from Jonathan who said that David looks very presidential and he would vote for you. So there you go.
Oh. What's the year? I think we're when did presidential cycles start in the U.S.? About 20 years in advance, it seems.
I think so, yes.
The rest of the world.
Started.
So
it's so funny. The rest of the world, it's like in England, I remember they're like, election in 20 days. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah,
we just call for one. We're going to have an election in a week. You're like, how does that happen?
We usually do it in about 30 to 40 days, yeah.
You just said about correctly. I don't know how that happened, but you did. We all heard it.
Yeah. I did.
Is this the secret? The more we get you smoking at night, the more you.
I guess. Well, I got my wine happening here too, so maybe that's.
That's what it is. It's that. Yeah.
So Emma Smith formed the Reformed Church of Latter-day Saints. So where did the polygamist folks come from? The FLDS.
So the FLDS.
Fucking Latter-day Saints?
Yeah.
That what the polygamists were? We want to fuck more women. FLDS.
They were very good at that. They kind of broke off in a lot of like it was kind of like a new
cabin. Mute. I can't control myself.
All right, fair enough.
Have another beer, David.
There you go. But it was kind of like almost a grenade happened in the center of Mormonism because so many different leaders that were part of it at the time broke off and started their own factions. I mean, like Cash said, his brother Hiram Smith started his own. The Whitmers, he was actually, I believe, teamed up with the Whitmers in one of the factions of the Reformed LDS Church with Emma. And there was the Church of Christ that broke off as well, and they don't regard anything after the Book of Mormon as being canon. So the Pearl of Great Price, the Doctrine and Covenants, the Joseph Smith Bible, they consider all of that just all bullshit, so they don't care about it. But they do still cling to the Book of Mormon at the core of it. Mm-hmm. But
now, wasn't the original name for the church the Church of Christ?
That is correct, yeah, and that was a big division because Joseph wanted to introduce this piece of the Latter-day Saints, and this is a breakoff that happened in 1837 or 1838, I believe. He wanted to bring about this idea of introducing the Latter-day Saints into it because I think he took it from a Bible verse or something, but he wanted to do this, but a lot of people didn't agree with changing the name of it, and David Whitmer was one of these people. And David Whitmer is just one of the people that was involved in the genesis of the Mormon Church. speaking Mormonese, and I have to stop myself, like David says. But so like they broke off just for one of the sheer facts that they didn't agree with changing the name of the book of the Mormon Church. And it's just, I mean, they weren't even called Mormons until it was until they were called, or they didn't even embrace Mormons until it became the Brighamite faction that moved out to Salt Lake City. Everybody else was just offended when they were called Mormonites, be it by people that weren't Mormons.
Hey, were you taught, Bryce, that the only time ever that the Mississippi is frozen solid is when the Mormons?
Yes, I have been. Yep, I remember that clearly.
You know, the biggest thing that I see as that if you ask any Mormon on the planet that I've asked, and my entire family and genealogy is Mormons, and you ask them about what did Joseph translate, and they will tell you golden plates.
Yeah.
None of them even know about a fucking hat and a rock. And which it blows my mind. I didn't know till I was an adult, but it was only in my late 30s that I figured that shit out, and it was because I read. But
have you guys heard of the Kinderhook plates? That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that buried him, but they I
know
snooze that shit right past.
That's what I don't understand. So a bunch of I believe it was a bunch of farmers or people in the area where the Mormon Church had set up. I think it was in Nauvoo area.
I think they were Mormons. They were part of the church, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what I understood it to be.
Yeah, and but they kind of were thinking that maybe Joseph was bullshit. So they got some sheets of brass, and somebody had a box of tea from China that had like Chinese characters on it. So they took like the Chinese and kind of morphed it and made it look like weird symbol shit and punched this all out on these brass plates. And then they buried them in a hill. And then they got some farmer to be like, hey, look, I dug up these brass plates. And they called Joseph Smith over and was like, hey, you know about these plates and shit. Can you, like, tell us what this says? And he makes up a bunch of shit. And, of course, they all know that it's fake. But then something happened, and there's where I lose the detail, but something happened, and they never really went through with busting him on it for some reason. But
from what I understood, they busted him on it, but he finagled a way that said that Satan was using them to fool him, and he basically said that the way I understand it or remember it is he was fooled, but it was all through Satan. And it's all part of that discerning the spirits thing.
Okay.
Satan makes a pretty good fall guy for any inaccuracies with Joseph. Like when you're talking to true believing Mormons about Joseph and about some of the shit that he would say, or like you bring up something factual like the Kinderhook plates, they just say, "Oh well, Joseph, he was a man just like like all of us are, and he made mistakes, but he was still a holy prophet of God." But he's the fallible human being. But it's like, okay, so everybody does make mistakes. But when he wasn't making mistakes and it was literally his end game to try and swindle people, and you can demonstrably prove that he doesn't just seem like a slightly fallible holy prophet. He seems just kind of like an asshole.
Bryce, did you get the indoctrination that polygamy came only on the trail to Salt Lake City?
No, I did not get that at all. I grew up, they acknowledged that it happened in the Salt Lake Valley when they first came over and made the pilgrimage, but they said that, I was told about the manifesto that it was released basically by just a prophet at the time and kind of some of the Quorum of the 12 at the time, and it was a revelation from God banning polygamy. And I was satisfied with that. I never questioned beyond that, and I never read D&C or Doctrine and Covenants 132, which is Yeah. Oh my God, that thing is fucking amazing. I recommend everybody, if you're listening back to this podcast in the future, pause it right now and just do a Google search for Doctrine and Covenants 132.
Is that the flaming sword bit?
No, that's where Joseph got caught.
Oh, okay.
Having an affair, basically, or several of them, and God gave him revelation directly to his wife. He killed if she didn't accept these other women.
Well, yeah, that's what I. Okay, the flaming sword is later when he's getting more babes, right? Because he would tell them, hey, God says I have to marry you, and like Moroni threatened me with this giant flaming sword if I don't marry you and have sex with you, so better do that.
If I'm not mistaken, that might be in there. I can't remember just from like reading back on it, but I think that was drawn from his recountings later of the angel appearing and commanding him to do it.
Okay.
Right.
I think that was only just a story that he told, but I could be wrong. I cannot remember specifically because it's been a little while since I've read it from front to back.
What was unique is in seminary we were taught that because polygamy, everybody thought Mormons had multiple wives, and so they taught us what to say, and we explained it that on the trail all the way to Salt Lake, many men died, and God asked the men to take extra wives, not for sexual reasons, so that they would be protected. Like, hey,
take care of the widows.
Right, you're responsible for this group of widows. You're responsible for this group. That kind of deal. But then, as I got into my early 20s, that all changed, and the Mormons acknowledged, and even have on the Mormon genealogy site, you can pull up Joseph Smith, and it showed his 12, I think it was 11 or 12 wives.
He's got like 30-odd wives.
Well, now the church recently, I'm talking really recently, in the past 12 months,
October,
has 30-something of them.
Yeah.
And there's still more. There's still more, but the reason they acknowledged it is because the records were found.
Yeah.
Not only that, like, not only was he just like, I mean, like DNC 132, like you said, Cash, it was revelation that he gave because he was caught fooling around, right? Well, this was, he was really, really good at fooling around. He was a swab motherfucker, right? I mean, he was trying to come on to Eliza Snow, who was his wife's best friend, the day after they got married. Like, he was, he liked the poon. He was after it all the time.
Well, and he used to send husbands away, be like, I really need you to go on this mission for the church, man. So he'd send them to like England or some shit, and then he'd turn around to the guy's wife and be like, oh, Moroni showed up with that flaming sword, and he said, I gotta marry you and have sex with you, and it's got to be, or I'm gonna get run through with the flaming sword, man. So
he taught Brigham Young well, because there's a book called The 19th Wife, and if you haven't read it, if you want to hear misogyny at its finest, read The 19th Wife. It's written in first person from his 19th wife.
Wow.
And what she endured. So Joseph Smith, passed along that tradition of multiple wives.
Yeah.
It was only till, I think, was it being annexed as part of the states that they...
That's right.
They agreed to not do it, but they continued it till 1919 or something?
I listened to Bryce's episode about that, and it was kind of, from what I understand, the upper echelons were still being polygamist in secret.
Right.
But they were publicly, oh, no, we don't do that anymore. We're over it. We've learned our lesson,
That, or they moved out of the country. So that Utah can still get its statehood, and they just went to Canada or to Mexico. I'm the descendant of my grandma was a native Canadian because she was a descendant of one of these factions. Like, well, I mean, that shit's real.
We have Bountiful out in BC, which is a polygamous. It's a polygamous compound, and there's been several pushes to what's the guy's name? Blackwell or something is the guy who's kind of the leader, and they've been trying to prosecute him for bigamy. because he's got a bunch of wives and shit, and that's here in Canada. And I think the other group went to Mexico, if I recall.
All right, so I know you haven't heard from me in a while, but because I don't know anything about these topics until you brought up Bountiful, which, according to the Book of Mormon, kind of is the place to be.
And that's in Canada, eh?
I'm just saying, everything else.
There's one in Utah too.
Yeah, that's the town I grew up in.
I just mean, like,
10 miles
in the
from
Book
Salt
of
Lake.
Mormon, just pretty much everything has been multiply fucked up the ass through. It's just like, it's like by both sides. You know, it's like this city was taken by this guy, and then it was this side, and there was this side. But in Bountiful, everything was just fine.
You know, Joseph Smith, Bryce, he did the same type of thing. He sent men off, some of his leaders off to serve missions in Spain and wherever, in France, all so that he could get their wives.
Yep.
Which is
that is true.
Well, he took that chapter out of David, right?
Yeah.
But he didn't send these guys off to their deaths, so that was a mistake he made.
Yeah, they kind of, some of them came back and was like, isn't that my wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, but most of them accepted it. I mean.
Yep. Oh,
He was a prophet.
Yes, Beth?
I'm sitting here listening to you guys being back and forth, and the only thing that keeps running through my mind is this religion, this cult, is basically a means to justify their bad acts, and that is it. There's like no, it's just basically, I'm going to fuck her, so I'm going to write this rule so I can do it.
Is there any other reason for starting a religion?
Right, that's what's fascinating, I think, is like, what if that's how it all started, right, Beth? Like, what if that's how all of them started, and we get this whole, like, we get to see it happen?
We
like,
do.
Here it is.
It's like when I was in college, I got hooked up into the whole Josh McDowell, and he did a series book on cults, and Mormonism was one of the ones he included as a cult, and I consider all religions cults, but my knowledge of Mormonism is pretty old. And it's funny because I still kind of filter my information through those rose-colored glasses, even though I've been out of the church for over 20 years. But it's funny because I'm sitting here listening, and it's just like none of this stuff, like back in the 80s, early 80s, was even remotely talked about. Mm-hmm. It's like, and I sit here and because history of religion is one of my things that I'm into. But it's like you said, it's like we're watching it happen, and I just don't understand how the fuck people can follow it.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
when you're raised in it, it's easy.
I'm saying, but there are people that have converted to Mormon.
Well, I mean, it's because the people that convert to Mormonism are spoon-fed the same exact story that true believing Mormons that were born into the faith believe in. I mean, they just get differing degrees of how much of it they're exposed to.
It's a tactic that the missionaries use called milk before meat. We talked about that a little bit in our Scientology episode because they do the same kind of thing, and they teach the shiny happy shit first, and then they wait till you're hooked, and then they trot out the weird shit. Like, now we're going to baptize dead people. Oh, that's not so weird, really.
Bryce,
well, it's like,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't remember, in the chat room, someone brought up, they said, this is also very complicated. I mean, how in the hell would a, quote, normal person even keep any of this shit straight?
Well, when you're indoctrinated in it, you're given it by piecemeal, and it all.
Right, and that's why they have the seminary stuff in high school, so they feed you more and more and more.
Yeah.
And usually the seminary class is full of not only your class members that you see in normal school, but also your church members, like all the friends that you talk to at church and anybody that you ever associate with. And the seminary teachers are oftentimes church leaders or bishops in their off time or whatever. So, I mean, it's very insular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have the proselytizing or the conversion, or in both your cases, the hereditary aspect of the indoctrination down to a science.
Mormonism has perfected religion.
Yeah.
They're ever changing because they have a living prophet. So they have that benefit. They've covered all their bases. I've never seen a better marketing system and a better system in place to answer the toughest questions. They have an answer for everything. And so I wanted to ask Bryce. Bryce, are you familiar, or have you already done it on your podcast, with the land grab that Joseph Smith did, where he forced his members to go buy land?
So how I was going to say how my podcast is kind of set up. I'm doing it in like a linear storyline format. So I'm introducing all of the characters slowly, and I give like each heavy hitter their own episode so you can understand who they are, where they came from, and where they're going and how they're involved in the story. And then the main storyline slowly progresses as things are occurring and introduces these characters, you know, as they come into play. So right now the storyline... Sorry, go ahead.
I said I'm going to have to go back and listen to yours. This is fascinating to me.
It's great shit. I love the nicknames. He's got Not So Smarty Marty was my favorite. That was
Good old
awesome.
Martin Harris. Yeah, dum 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 dum.
Dum dum.
Yep.
Well, listen, guys, let's take a minute, and I want to do my logical fallacy, and we're actually a little after 11, so we're gonna have to start winding down a little bit. So let's do the logical fallacy of the week and go from there.
And now it's time for logical fallacies for dummies.
David, be quiet.
And welcome to this installment of Logical Fallacies for Dummies. In this installment, I'd like to talk about the logical fallacy called appeal to antiquity or appeal to tradition. It's the other way of stating it. This occurs when we look to history as a reason why we should believe something. Kind of goes like this. X has always been done, possibly for centuries. Therefore, X is true. Right. Doesn't quite work that way. So, people like to stick with things that they know, which sometimes can be good, but in terms of logical fallacy, definitely not the case. And we see this happening time and time again. You know, well, we've done this in my family for generations, or, you know, ancient scholars believe that this was true and therefore we should follow what they said. And it just doesn't always work that way. In fact, a lot of things we have improved on over time, or we have realized that they aren't worth, you know, what we thought they were. We can't just cling to something because it's always been around as far as we know. We see this cropping up a lot lately in terms of alternative medicine. People like to claim that the medical field has discarded valuable ancient traditions that, you know, are far more effective, are more inexpensive than pharmaceuticals or modern medical theories and practices that we have today. And this really is not usually the case. For instance, there are a lot of homeopathic remedies that have been cropping up, and those who are touting these as great things are often saying, well, you know, this was practiced in ancient Chinese medicine, or this was practiced by the ancient Greeks, or what have you. And even if that were true, which oftentimes it even isn't, that doesn't mean it's any good. One example of this would be colloidal silver. Yes, it does have some antimicrobial properties, but it's nowhere near effective as modern antibiotics, antivirals, and antifungals. That's why people stopped using silver, because we found something better. I did some research on this, and I was looking for a good example of appeal to antiquity, and I found some woo that I didn't even know existed. Welcome to color light therapy. Now, this is something that I'd never heard of before, but apparently it's been around for centuries. And basically, flashing a colored light on yourself in specific places can heal you of all kinds of ailments. And it's, this ancient tradition that is far better than everything we have now. I found a great video online. There's a number of videos about this online, and I found one that actually came from a company out of Toronto who are selling basically a glorified flashlight that flashes colored light on you, and it's supposed to heal you. So listen to how this YouTube, I guess, infomercial uses appeal to antiquity to try and sell you on the merits of their product.
Color light therapy has been present throughout history. The Egyptians, Hindus, Greeks, Romans, the Gnostics, as well as the Neoplatonic, Jewish, and Christian mystics and metaphysicians all believed in the energy carried in light, and all agree that without light, life would not be possible on Earth. This quest to discover its essence led to the development of the Lumilite 2000 series of color ray illuminators. The Lumilite is a practical, high-quality color therapy applicator that runs on 2 AA batteries. The therapist can be either a health professional or a trained color therapy enthusiast. And sessions can be performed almost anywhere.
Okay, so she does use something else there called appeal to authority, which is another logical fallacy that we'll probably get to on another installment. But you can see there she's just listing off all these ancient cultures that know that color light therapy is so valuable, and her company now has this great modern way of harnessing this ancient tradition, and it's going to be so beneficial for you. Right. Yes, there are studies out there that show exposure to certain colors can affect moods and that sort of thing, but there's no scientific evidence that I'm aware of that tells you flashing a light of a specific color on a specific area of the body is going to heal anything. But hey, I learned some new woo, so not a lost cause. However, this is a good example of why appealing to antiquity just doesn't give any more validity to your argument than saying, well, I say so. Things that were done in ancient times are usually not as good as what we do now. That's why we've improved on them. So to accept something just because ancient Romans did it is not the way to go. Do some research. Find out what kind of empirical data it is out there and try basing your decisions on that instead of, hey, Nero did it, and thank you. That concludes today's episode of Logical Fallacies for Dummies.
Yeah, you should have seen that. It's like flashing a colored flashlight on you, and you're gonna get healed.
I remember seeing an infomercial that it's like this one that like molds to your palm of your hand and has like a little strap, and it conforms. It's like shaped, and then you like run it over a certain part of your body, and it's got like 50 LEDs on it that are flashing all crazy and cool looking, but it's just ridiculous. I'm so glad you addressed that. It's so absurd.
The ancient, Romans did it.
What caught my ear when I listened to it this time is that when she appeals to antiquity, notice that she did not say they used colored lights. They used light. Light therapy is actually used now to treat seasonal affective disorder. So yeah, there is validity to light therapy.
Yeah.
And then she takes color therapy, which there is validity to color therapy. Hence why, like, if you've ever been in a prison, they use certain colors in certain rooms, and she's mashed them together to come up with woo.
Well, what made me laugh in the comments, I mean, that video was about 7 years old, actually, but in the comment section, she was saying, Oh, I experienced being draped with colored handkerchiefs, and that was so empowering. I'm like, what the fuck? You get draped with a bunch of scarves, and
Yeah,
it's like,
get a customer who's epileptic or bipolar and have them flashing lights in their eyes. Yeah, that'll do them good. It'll kill them.
yeah, no kidding.
Dumbass.
Yeah. But yeah, that's on YouTube, and we can put up a link to that if you want to have a good laugh later too. Just to say briefly, Unrenowned Tech, yes, it is special wine. You got it. And let's see, Jonathan. I don't know if we're gonna have time. We only had about 15 minutes. He wanted to know about Layman and Lemuel. Bryce, can you summarize that real quick?
Well, I don't know. This would probably be a really good Mormon question for David, because I mean he's the one that kind of
Yeah.
he has the most recent knowledge on Layman and Lemuel. So
Well, where the fuck did he go, David?
He's here. Calm down. You, all of you are forgetting that the national championship game is on right now.
I don't care about your fucking football unless they're wearing white uniforms and dunking people on the sidelines. I don't want to know.
Oregon is wearing white tonight. You never know about Oregon. They always, all right, whatever, fine. I paused that for you. So
Okay.
That's how cool you are.
Well, thank you.
And it's an exciting game. This is not all right. Anyway, what was the question? Oh yeah,
Layman
and Lemuel. Yeah, stand-up guys. They were the I don't know. I don't even want to say skeptic, because that actually it didn't even take a skeptic. They were just normal thinking people. So if you put yourself in their shoes, these are these guys. Who cares when? Let's just take the time frame out. These two guys living life, and they had a dad, and the dad was like, "Hey, here's the thing. I went to sleep last night and I had a dream, and in the dream, God told me that, yeah, everybody is wrong and they're all going to go to hell, and we have to go tell them that, and we just have to go around and yell at everyone that, you're evil." And so he did this, and he just, to the point where people were so mad at him, they literally were going to kill the man. Like, we are so fucking sick of you telling us about your crazy dreams that he had to leave town. So he tells his whole family, including these two guys, I assume teenagers, maybe at best in their 20s, guys, let's go. Everyone's going to kill us because of my dreams. So, okay, so off they go. And while they're out there, he's telling them they got to go back into these spy missions back into the city and steal shit from people. Their father is insane. He is just pathologically insane. Every time he has a dream, their whole world gets fucked up more. And so they basically have enough of it, and they're like, this is just, I can't do it anymore. We're out. And they become the villains in the Book of Mormon because of their doubting. They doubted.
They're the stiff-necked people, right?
And so the story is kind of like, no matter how fucked up it all, what we're telling you is, all right, we're going to tell you some stuff. You're going to learn some stuff that really defies all logic. But here's the thing. You don't want to get cursed by God, so you just better swallow it, I think, is the message they're trying to give. Because what happens to these poor, awful people is that once God's had enough of their doubting, he decides that he's going to curse them by turning their skin dark. And all their descendants, you see, so that we'll all know who are the sinful ones and who are the holy ones. Although we're at the part of the Book of Mormon where it switched sides, so now I'm all confused. Because I don't know, even Cash, I don't know if you really remember the book, but by the end of, what did we just read, Helaman, it switches sides. The Lamanites, the evil dark ones, have become holy, and the Nephites are all evil. And I'm like, wait a minute, did skin color change again? Or is everyone just confused? I can't figure it out.
There was nothing about them turning white and delightsome at all, so.
Oh, I think I don't get it now. So, gentlemen, please explain.
Oh, I'm lost there. I vaguely remember it. I remember the Layman and Lemuel story. It's kind of doubting Thomas times 2. And so, I mean, all of this was robbed from anywhere he could get it, the stories, and he just put them together. So I don't know if it's supposed to make sense, but I definitely don't know about the end of Helaman. I don't remember.
Right. It just the point was, remember in the story, like the Lamanites were always doing evil works and the Nephites were doing God's work, and hence the whole skin color thing.
Right.
But at this point in the story, the Lamanites have all been converted, and the Nephites are the ones being, stiff-necked. They're stiff-necked, damn it. They're stiff-necked. Which, by the way, Cash, some Southern listeners have written me and said that when I say stiff-necked, it sounds very much like stiff naked in Southern talk, and so every time they hear me say they're so stiff naked, and they're just like they are stiff. See, I said naked that time. I'm mixing myself up. Stiff naked.
So they're walking around with giant boners, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what. Apparently, every time I say stiff naked, all of the Southern listeners have a whole different idea of what I'm talking about.
The Lamanites at some point, overcome the Nephites, killing them all, and so
that's not a spoiler, by the way. That was in like chapter 1. They told us that would happen.
It was in like the introduction.
It was. I'm so mad. If someone had warned me, like, if you're going to do this show where you don't want to know what's going to happen, skip the first like 5 chapters, because they're all spoilers. That's all it is. A bunch of spoilers. Terrible.
Oh well. Okay, folks. Well, we're going to have to start wrapping up. So, Beth, do you want to tell us about your blog and where people can find you?
It's Havoc and Chaos. It's over on Blogger. It goes by interesting.blogger.com, but just look at Havoc and Chaos, it'll pop up. It's also on my Facebook, and basically I blog about social issues, politics, LGBT rights, and also mental health issues, but basically, whatever floats my boat, I just aggregate the news stories that don't seem to be getting a lot of press, so you won't be reading about like the real popular stuff because there's not a whole hell of a lot I can add to it.
And lots of
better writers are out there. Yes, I do follow the fringe element as far as the con nutters and the ring, the Reich, as I call them. So.
The what did you say last?
The Reich. I call them the right wing instead of the right wing.
I got you.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I use that because they think they're a realm. It delves into the whole dominionist stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, David's going back to watch a stupid football game, so he gets to go last. So, Cash, we just saw you last night.
The instant I am prompted, madam. Instant. You saw how quick I was? Thought I was far away?
Yeah.
Maybe I just had to pick my nose. You ever think of that? I could have been in it.
You could have, but I pretty much know better. Where the fuck do we find you?
Oh, I thought I was last.
Well,
all right. I jumped in. Okay.
We'll see if you go now. You can watch the game until everybody else is done.
If anyone would like to hear the Book of Mormon in its original, in its most current format, from someone that has not been indoctrinated with all of the fun apologetics growing up, then you could listen to My Book of Mormon podcast by me, David Michael. So you go to mybookofmormonpodcast.com, or you could look for it on Stitcher or Spreaker, iTunes. Let's see, Twitter at My Book of Mormon. You can't put the podcast on the end of that. Not enough characters in Twitter for that. And and on Facebook, I think it's just My Book of Mormon. I think. Yes. No podcast. No, there's a podcast at the end on the Facebook. Sorry, Twitter's the only exception.
If you Google, if you search My Book of Mormon on Facebook, you'll find it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I was worried about that when I first came out with it, because I'm like, man, having Book of Mormon in your title, you're competing against a fairly large religious movement and a hit musical.
Yes.
So it's like, what are the odds? So the fact that My Book of Mormon even pops up on a Google search, I'm happy with the results.
Awesome. Bryce, where the hell do we find you?
Well, I decided to take a little bit more of a flashy title, nakedmormonismpodcast.com. for some reason there wasn't a whole lot about naked Mormonism. So I mean, feel free to search it without your safe search on, see what else comes up.
You did show me where I could find naked Mormons, because I did.
Mormon.
What's that, Cash?
MormonGirls.com.
Yes. And Mormon boys. And he showed me MormonSecret.com because I wanted to find some garments, but I don't want to pay $100 for garments. I need any Mormons out there that want to send me some garments. That'd be really cool. Love to get some.
Yes, indeed. But,
go ahead, Bryce.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I'm there. I'm on Twitter at Naked Mormonism or Facebook Naked Mormonism Podcast. Pretty simple stuff. On iTunes and Stitcher, so just all the usual regular places.
Yep.
Is there any chance that I could end this episode with reading a quote about Joseph Smith that's like maybe a minute long?
Absolutely. Let's get Cash in first, and we can come back to that.
Awesome, thank you.
So Cash, we had the pleasure of your company last night. Where the hell are you going to be next month?
I'll be back next month, second Sunday. Starting at I believe we start at
7. Yeah.
And run until we run out of batteries. And so,
which is usually about 5 hours these days.
Yeah, last night was 5 hours almost, which is ridiculous. That we can cram an hour and 15 minutes worth of information into 5 hours is so we have AOA.fm, atheistonair.com, askgod.fm. Are you a real Christian.com?
Awesome.
So we have plans for the future with some of those, but we have a monthly podcast right now, and I love it. And you can find us on Facebook. There's some groups on Facebook. I believe there's 2 other groups, and that are kick ass. When I go visit, there's always just eye-shocking stuff.
You can say that again. and our good friend Pastor Roy, we can find him around too, somewhere on Facebook, I think.
Pastor Lee Roy.
Yes.
Roy, and because Roy's his last name.
That's right. He's friends with my good friend Ruby.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
She wants to go stroke his pussy.
Over at Diamonds, right?
That's
yeah.
right.
Oh no, Ruby works at Diamonds.
Yeah,
but
Ruby.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she offered to stroke Pastor Roy's pussy at his house and even get baptized in his tub, but she has a vagina and he's opposed to those.
Oh, Pastor Roy doesn't have a hot tub.
Oh yes, he does.
He has a hot tub in his bedroom. It's the baptismal font.
I think Ruby's gonna
He stole
try.
He must have taken that idea from my cousin, because that he I think originated the hot tub baptism.
No, I think it was the mobile home manufacturers.
Well, I think last I heard, Ruby's still gonna try and convince Pastor Roy to let her come over. So we'll see.
I think it's a match made in heaven.
Okay, Bryce, what's your Joseph Smith quote?
All right, so this was actually by D. Michael Quinn. He's a Mormon historian, ex-Mormon historian who was excommunicated. But he summed up Joseph Smith in like one massive paragraph of just adjectives and verbs. And it's just written so poignantly and just really, really gets to the point of what Joseph really was. So I was just hoping I could share it here. So it goes by D. Michael Marquardt, quote, "Few Mormons today can grasp the polarizing charisma of their founding prophet. Some may feel uncomfortable when confronted with the full scope of Joseph Smith's activities as a youthful mystic, treasure seeker, visionary, a loving husband who deceived his wife regarding about 40 of his polygamous marriages, a man for whom friendship and loyalty meant everything, but who provoked disaffection and testing the loyalty of his devoted associates, an anti-Mason who became a master Mason, church president who physically assaulted both Mormons and non-Mormons for insulting him, a devoted father who loved to care for his own children and those of others, temperance leader and social drinker, Bible revisionist and esoteric philosopher, city planner, pacifist and commander-in-chief, student of Hebrew and Egyptology, band president, jail escapee, healer, land speculator, mayor, judge and fugitive from justice, guarantor of religious freedom but limiter of freedom of speech and press, preacher and street wrestler, polygamist and advocate of women's rights, husband of other men's wives, a declared bankrupt who was a trustee in trust of church finances, political horse trader, U.S. presidential candidate, abolitionist, theocratic king, inciter to riot, and unwilling martyr.
Wow.
That was from Mormonism 101.
I love it. I've not heard that. That was perfect.
Yeah, it's just everything that he says is just so beautifully factual based, and it's, oh God, I just love that quote.
I had forgotten about the presidential candidate.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, Joseph Smith for president. There's a scary. Oh well, there's Mitt Romney. Oh boy. Yikes.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Bryce. That was awesome.
Now, thanks for letting me read it.
Oh, you're welcome. And I want to give a shout out to Miss Ashley and Bobby C. from No Religion Required. And if you don't listen to them, get your ass out there and fucking listen to their podcast because it's awesome. And I'm glad that they were able to hang with us as long as they were. That was fun. So, to close out the show, I have a new piece that I want to share with everybody, and special thanks goes out to our friend Dave Foda. This is a piece that he wrote and was gracious enough to let me use it at the end of the show. This is something he's called the Humanist's Creed, and I'd like to close out this evening's show with that if we could.
Well, goodbye, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you, everyone, for joining us.
And of rational thinking.
Yes.
And I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.